Welcome to Our Girl Relationships. On this channel, we talk about problems people face in their day-to-day lives. Let's start with a video.
I, 28, female, got married to my husband, 32, 6 years ago, and our marriage has been sweet. At that time, we had 2 adorable kids. I didn't know how bad the terrible twos were until I experienced it myself. I always laughed at my friends who had toddlers and were having trouble, but I think I got it worse than they did. My husband has a lovely family, and they are so close together. I have always admired that about them. He was born in Atlanta, where we live. His mom lives in the city as well, but his sisters moved to California 3 years ago. My mother-in-law called me and she was very frantic. She told me that she lost her job 2 weeks ago and she has been struggling and doesn't know what to do. She mentioned that since becoming a widow, it's been a lot taking care of everything, and she had almost no savings. I felt so bad for her, especially because I had never seen her like that before. She always seemed to have everything together. Most times when she visited us, she brought gifts for the kids, so I would never imagine that she had any financial strain. I called my husband immediately to ask him if his mom could stay at our house for a while. He said that he was okay with it as far as I didn't find it weird. She was so excited when I told her that she could come and stay with us until she sorted herself out. I was close to my mother-in-law, and she was an amazing person. From the time I met her son, we had little to no issues at all. She even sided me with my husband when I had an argument and would refer to me as her daughter. I loved her relationship with the kids and how she offered to help out with them whenever they could. I thought that this may be a blessing in disguise. At least I don't have to pay heavy nanny fees since my husband and I are usually at work. She moved into our house the next day and picked one of our guest rooms to stay in. We had 2 guest rooms, so it wasn't a bother or inconvenience to us at all. She kept saying how grateful she was to us for letting her stay. I assured her that we are family and would do anything for her, plus we could afford to, and she could stay as long as she wanted. That evening, before we went to bed, my husband asked if I was sure that I was okay with her living with us, and not just because she was his mother. He mentioned that we had never lived together before, and so he doesn't want the close proximity to affect our relationship because there may be things that both of us wouldn't agree with in the running of a home. I admitted that it was true, but I was ready to tolerate her until she got back on her feet. The next couple of months were amazing. I loved her company more and more. She bought groceries and paid some bills even when we told her we could handle it. Mother-in-law took care of the kids and made sure that I had nothing to worry about. She even cleaned and told me that I could reduce the amount of days that our cleaner came to the house and that she would do the chores on the days that the cleaner wouldn't be around. I was convinced that I had nothing to worry about. The most exciting thing was to see my kids engaged with grandma. They are super smart and always have a lot of questions, and she was there to indulge them and answer their questions. As time went on, my husband became more comfortable with her staying in the house. He saw the benefits of having her around, and we were not clashing at all. He was most excited about the fact that we could have more date nights. Since we started having kids, we kept having less and less alone times, and we craved it so much, but always pushed it to our 2 weeks vacation during the summer. This time, we had the liberty to go out whenever we wanted to and not worry about how our kids were doing. Before mother-in-law came, whenever we went out, I couldn't stop thinking about the kids and whether their babysitter was treating them well and all that. My husband would have to reassure me over and over again, but since mother-in-law came, I have been at ease. Life was just easier with her around, and honestly, I didn't mind her staying with us for a couple of years till the kids have grown a little bit more and don't need as much attention as they do now. For a few weeks now, mother-in-law has become more demanding. She usually complained that she was getting tired of staying at home, so I thought she was just bored, and that was why she was acting up. I offered to pay her a fee for all the babysitting and chores she had been doing so she wouldn't feel like she was jobless. That seemed to work because she became happier, but I noticed that something was still off. One Saturday when I had the week off, I was home and we were all in the living room watching TV. Grandma had offered to make her special family recipe, so she left the living room from time to time to check what was cooking. One time that she left the kitchen, a notification came in and I unintentionally glanced at it because I thought the notification was from my phone. What I saw was weird and shocking. It was a YouTube notification about a new video from a channel. The title was The Art of Manipulating Family Members. That made me very curious, but as I was about to pick up her phone, she came back from the kitchen. I made a mental note to check what that story was about and possibly check her search history. Different thoughts started running through my mind, but I dismissed them until I checked to see what was actually going on. It could have just been a video from a channel that she subscribed to because another kind of content that they offered, perhaps. Sadly, she was done cooking at the time and didn't leave again. We all went to the kitchen to get our food, and it was delicious. That evening, she fell asleep on the couch, and she was a deep sleeper. So that was my perfect opportunity. I checked her YouTube search history, and I couldn't believe what I saw. There were so many videos on how to manipulate family members, how to live in your son's house rent-free. There was even one that said how to manipulate your daughter-in-law who you don't like and get her to do what you want. I watched that particular video and saw that she was indeed practicing those things on me. She had been manipulating me from the beginning, from when she called and was crying on the phone. She had wanted to come live with us, but somehow made me be the one to ask her to come to our house. I couldn't live with someone who had been pretending all along. I took screenshots and sent them to my phone as evidence. There was no coming back from this. She had to leave the house first thing in the morning. My husband had gone on a work trip, so he wasn't home, and honestly, I prefer that he wasn't because I would have considered him before asking her to leave. I woke her up and asked her why she was manipulating me and why she was watching those videos. She got really defensive and started yelling at me about how I had no right to check her phone and all that. She said she never liked me and I behaved like I was better than everyone else, and she was fed up with me. I kept asking her why she was manipulating her son and I, and why she was watching those videos, but she didn't answer. I told her that I wanted her out of my house first thing the next morning, and I didn't care if she had no place to go, which I doubted anyways. She may have not even been broke after all, and just wanted to come and live with us. I feel like she could have just told us. But whatever her reason, I didn't want her in my house anymore. In the morning, I made sure she packed her things and left. I wasn't expecting her to call my husband because she knows what she did. I had concluded that if by morning she didn't call him, then she was definitely guilty. As I suspected, she didn't call him. She kept saying mean things to me and about me and how I take care of my kids and my home in general. I was seeing her true colors. She was finally saying all the things that she couldn't say before. My mother-in-law didn't like me at all, and she had been pretending for years. That hurt a lot. And I couldn't stand to hear her one more time. I sped up her packing, put her things in the trunk, and made sure to collect all the keys she had from my house. I even decided that collecting the keys was not enough. I was changing the locks right away. When she left, I called my husband and told him everything. I narrated everything that had happened to him. I couldn't hold back the tears. I felt betrayed and used because I really loved my mother-in-law and wanted the best for her, and she was only pretending to like me to get what she wanted from me. My husband was furious, and he said he would deal with the situation properly when he got back. We needed to find out why exactly she wanted to live with us, since it was all a lie from the start. When my husband came back, he apologized to me on behalf of his mother and said that this was what he was trying to prevent, and that was why he kept asking me if it was okay with his mom living with us. He knew that it could potentially bring about issues. He confronted his mom and told her how disappointed he was in her and how she destroyed the relationship that we had with her by being selfish. He demanded to know the truth. At first, she wouldn't say anything until we threatened to cut ties with her. She said she wasn't broke at all, but was saving up to travel. She also didn't want to work anymore, So she quit her job, and the only way to not finish her savings was to find a way to live with us, since her daughters were in California. He told her that she would have to apologize to me and not do anything funny again. She did, and I forgave her. But we set some boundaries, and she definitely wasn't to come back to live with us. Your husband is a darling. He suspected something would happen from the beginning. I love how he protected you. Your mother-in-law is selfish. She didn't want to work, but was saving up for a trip and wanted to live off her son and you. I'm happy she got caught.
Next story.
I, 37, male, live in the US with my 36-year-old spouse. She is American and I'm French. We both didn't want kids and didn't have any, and we enjoy our life this way. We have nieces and nephews we see occasionally during the holidays or family gatherings. We just came back from a family visit that ended up in some argument with our relatives over taking our niece, 17 years old, to a planned trip to France to hang out with her family for 4 weeks during the summer break. By any means, our niece is a good kid. We watched her a couple of times at our home or theirs when her parents needed to be out of town and couldn't take her. She listens to us for the most part, but there are things she just doesn't do and gives us some attitude about when asked to. Like taking her shoes off, not eating on the couch, asking adults for food instead of snacking, staying at the table until the end of the meal, waiting for everyone to start eating, setting the table, asking if she can watch TV instead of turning it on at will. Those may seem like minor trivial details, but they are not where I come from. Arguing with adults over this type of trivial thing is not even a thing in my family. No fault of her own. Culturally, kids are raised differently here and there. And I'm fine with it, but this is also why I don't want to bring her with us on our trip. My sister has a big property with farm animals, a bed and breakfast, and all the kids are used to doing chores and don't argue because it's a communal thing we do together. Her property is a classic French small castle gem, and there is always something to do. We plan to drive to a couple of wine places, visit friends, and we would need to leave our niece in the care of my sister. I already know that the way my sister plans days for her kids will be a problem to my niece, and I don't want to burden her with that. She is making her home a welcoming place for over 18 family members, plus the guests in the bed and breakfast throughout the summer. We just do what she tells us and help where we can, because she is the host. It's the way we've done it since forever. So when my brother-in-law asked if I could take our niece on a trip to France, I said no. He insisted I ask my sister before I answered, and I said that I wouldn't. I asked that we talk in private and not in front of the kids to explain why to him. He started screaming, so I answered why, mentioning that French families operate differently and it wouldn't work for anyone. I know for a fact that my sister doesn't want any of it. She hosted an American exchange student once and didn't have a good time at all, and it was around the property, work, and chores. Now, brother-in-law, sister-in-law, mother-in-law, and father-in-law are pissed off and trying to get my wife to make it happen for the sake of our niece. AITA for not wanting to take my niece to France? Your reasoning doesn't matter. You are not obligated to allow anyone outside your nuclear family, in your case you and your significant other, to tag along on trips. I can understand why your in-laws are upset with your stated reasoning. I'd be offended if I was told your kids can't come because Americans are raised differently. You should have simply stated, my sister is hosting my wife and I will not impose on her hospitality by making her host and entertain someone she's not related to. Or, this trip is for the wife and left it at that. No explanation needed. But I'm not willing to declare you an a-hole for that, because they should have accepted the first no to begin with. We hosted members of a singing group for several years. There were students from all over the world. The American students were the worst. One of them thought she could tell me how to raise my daughters. The entitlement was very strong. With the brother-in-law yelling and screaming at you, how can you expect anything very different from his daughter?
Next story.
So I, 27 female, am married to 29 male, and in February my sister, 34, dropped her 2 kids, 10 female and 6 male, to go on a last-minute out-of-state trip. When the 10-year-old was getting ready for her shower, she asked if I would check her hair. Confused, I asked why I would be doing that, but also told her, yes, I'll check it. My niece tells me she had head lice and has had it for a while. I'm shocked. After not being told any of this, I checked her hair and sure enough, there's not only eggs but moving head lice. I asked her what her mom had been using to get rid of it, and my niece says mayo and vinegar. I'm baffled. I called my sister again after I've already called them about not having clothes packed. They had random clothes packed in their suitcases. And she goes, oops, it must have slipped my mind. How does head lice slip your mind? Well, I went off on her. Called her an irresponsible mother for not putting her kids first. So we haven't spoken much since February. Well, I've texted her a couple of times to try to break the ice so things won't be so awkward. I love having my nieces and nephew over and spoiling them. Well, my oldest niece was over this weekend. She lives with my mom and dad, and I didn't have the gas to drive her home last night. My mom sent my sister's husband, who's abusive, but that's a story for another time, to pick up my oldest niece, 12, female. My other niece came over, so excited to see us, and informed us that her and her brother are never allowed over to my house again. She begged me to talk to her mom about it. I called my mother and sister and finally asked what was going on. My mother said she wasn't pleased with how I handled things with my sister, and I was wrong for going off on her. My sister told me she's salty and done discussing her kids with me, and she hung up. I informed my mother I'm going radio silent and won't be speaking to any of them for a while because my feelings are valid. I might be the asshole because I tried to tell my sister how irresponsible she was being with her kids. So, am I the a-hole? It sounds like they are separating from you because you pointed out she is negligent to her kids, which is a form of reportable abuse, and are keeping them away from you because you are the only one even willing to point it out. Get info from your eldest niece when you see her about what is going on, because kids shouldn't live in conditions where they have lice and their guardian puts at-home remedies and makes them live with lice long term, rather than actually treating them. Your mother is in the wrong for supporting your sister abusing her kids. She's being oblivious and irresponsible. You called her out on it, and now everyone is butthurt. Everyone wants the truth until it's about them.